If you wouldn't mind starting with just an introduction of yourself, what you teach and how you fit into the School of Culture, History and Language.
Okay, so my name's Robert Cribb, I'm Professor of Asian History. I teach a course called The Investigative Historian in Asia. I've also taught the first year course, Culture and Society in Asia and the Pacific, and I've taken part in various other courses, including the Mongol Empire in World History, Southeast Asia in World History, and Lies, Conspiracy and Propaganda.
Wow, it's quite a broad range.
Well, I'm interested in many different things.
Yeah, that's great. So, have you ever seen a budget cut like this before in any institution?
I've never been part of an institution that was being cut like this, but I'm conscious that other institutions have been cut. Sometimes departments have been cut very drastically, both here in Australia and in other parts of the world, and it's always been a very messy, unsatisfactory process.
So I guess we'll skip the online course question.
Shall I just, I can add something to that.
Yeah.
Part of the problem with drastic cuts is that it's never really a matter of just slicing a few people off, slicing some salaries off the budget and proceeding from there. Most departments or schools work rather organically, and when you take one person out, or when you take 10 or 15 people out, the gaps that are left require an awful lot of restructuring, internal rearrangement. So there's a long period involved simply to recover from the cuts themselves, let alone to make any progress in developing the program further.
So not only will this be an issue for the budget itself, but this will sort of, once these cuts are put in place, it will have consequences for years and years to come, basically.
It will certainly take some time. You couldn't say that it will last for forever, because universities are constantly in change, but you'd expect at least 3 years of significant disruption as the survivors readjust to the new situation.
Survivors. Alright, so what are your thoughts on the overall budget cut? Do you think it could be justified by the explanation that you've been given by the college?
I'm not very happy with the explanation that we've been given so far. The explanation is concentrated on long-term trends, some of which are indeed long-term trends, but not necessarily things that have directly affected us. They're talking about a gradual decline in humanities and social sciences enrolments across Australia, which is not necessarily applicable in ANU. The striking thing is that our budget position has moved from a very comfortable surplus to a terrifying deficit in just three years, and none of the explanations that have been put forward as the main explanation explain that. So we really need to look for some explanations closer to home to understand how the budget moved so quickly into crisis.
So the saying that there's an overall trend in drop in humanities thing doesn't necessarily apply to the ANU, but this would mean that they wouldn't just be looking at the College of School of Culture, History, Language, but other, like College of Arts, Social Science, College of Asia Pacific as a whole, perhaps.
Exactly. And declining humanities, social sciences numbers across Australia doesn't necessarily mean that the numbers will decline at all at ANU. It may simply mean that the best students still come to ANU, and it's other universities that suffer a catastrophic decline.
That's right. And if we're declining our subjects, of course the amount of people studying humanities or have interest in humanities are going to go down if we no longer continue to offer this sort of courses.
If we stop offering an attractive program, that will certainly damage our enrolments.
Yeah. Dig their own graves, in a sense. So the next question is about 3-year contracts. Do you think it's possible to consistently deliver quality language and culture and history courses if the teaching staff are on 3-year contracts?
I think it's not a satisfactory arrangement. Of course, many people over the years have been on short-term contracts. My first job was a 3-year contract, and I taught history and politics on that contract. But it's not very satisfactory for the for the long-term development of a program, and particularly a language program that depends very much on the quality and commitment of the individual teacher. A small language program depends very much on the individual. So you're really shackling the system right from the start, the program right from the start, making it difficult for the program to be viable in the long term.
So what benefits do you see from the continuation of teaching less commonly taught languages and subjects?
I think there are two big benefits. One is a national benefit, that we really need people who are fluent in Hindi. We really need people who are fluent in Thai and Vietnamese. If we're going to understand the cultural depth of China and India, we need to have some people who are really seriously expert in classical Chinese and in Sanskrit. We don't need a huge number, but then those languages are not being taught at other universities, where the national language seems to me that we have a national mandate to provide those languages in the national interest. The other thing is that academic life is very much like a rainforest ecology. You have big trees that are obviously very successful, you have small trees, you have vines that only survive because they can grow on the top of other trees. If you remove part of that ecosystem, if you remove some of the small species, it tends to make for a poorer environment, a less rich, a less exciting environment. So the kind of Asian studies experience that we can offer to our students becomes poorer for losing these small languages. It's not to say that we have to offer absolutely everything, but we have success in these areas, and it seems very short-sighted to cut them simply because, according to one accounting system, they're not breaking even.
Very good point. Yes. So do you think that ANU can continue to offer language education of this sort of quality if these cuts are put into place?
I think it's going to be difficult. There are two kinds of difficulties. With the languages where the academics are being reduced to fixed-term contracts, the problem is continuity. The problem may be retaining those staff. They're some of the best teachers of their languages in Australia. It's possible they will go elsewhere. They may get jobs overseas if their employment is being terminated here. They're just, even if they stay, they're not going to be able to offer the same guarantee of a long-term program that we can offer at the moment. For the larger languages, the problem is a bit different. So the number of staff teaching particularly Chinese and Japanese is going to be seriously cut according to the change management document. The budget for part-time teachers is also going to be seriously cut. We have a few people who are able to come in from non-language teaching backgrounds and teach in those languages, but they're not trained language teachers, and they have other jobs. They have important jobs in teaching Chinese anthropology or Japanese history, so it's not the best use of their skills to turn them into language instructors. So it's very difficult to see how we will maintain our current really high quality language training in those two areas. And Japanese in particular is a growing area. How we will possibly maintain it if the number of staff is cut from every direction.
I'm really worried about that too. My Chinese class already has not enough tutors for the amount of students, and this is only second year Chinese, so. Are the staff in your area or in general making an alternative to these budget cuts, like any alternative model?
Yes, the school management group, which has representatives from all the departments of the school, as well as the school managers, the director and the deputy directors, it's been working very hard over the last 3 or 4 weeks to come up with an alternative plan. We began by reading the change management document very closely to identify what we see as the practical problems that it will entail. And we've been working on an alternative budget plan which may involve some staff cuts, but nothing like the drastic trimming that the Dean appears to have in mind at the moment. And it also involves looking at ways in which we can expand our current program, maintain most of what we're doing at the moment, but develop new areas that will bring in new students. So we've actually found it quite exciting. One of the frustrations of the last few years has been that there has been relatively little leadership or encouragement to develop new areas of teaching. We've had some encouragement from some individuals, but on the whole, there hasn't been very much encouragement to think broadly. I suppose if there's one good thing that's happening in the crisis is that it's brought us all together to think of these new possibilities. But we will only be able to achieve them if we're left relatively intact and we're not losing more than 20% of our staff.
So one of the main issues is that we don't have a lot of information about what's going on, like the budget hasn't really been released properly and things like that. So we're wondering if you would consider, I don't know if you should record this is more like a personal thing that I was talking about with my friend before, freedom of information sort of requests, that if you could lodge a freedom of information request, what sort of request would you want to lodge?
Okay, that's an interesting possibility. Mostly freedom of information requests have to do with personnel matters. So if someone feels that they've been badly treated and they're conscious that there is a paper trail or there should be a paper trail, which might not really exist, then they can use freedom of information to uncover that trail or that absence of trail and perhaps get recompense for something that's been badly done. In this case, I'm not sure that freedom of information requests would have an effect soon enough to make any difference. I've also been deeply frustrated by the difficulty in getting information, especially budget information. We're not sure whether the budget information exists and it's being withheld, or whether it simply doesn't exist. And that's been frustrating because we have all wanted to take part in this process in good faith. We would really like to be able to work with we'd really like to be able to work with the college authorities, understanding that they're under pressure, that we have ideas, they have ideas, to try and produce a solution to the school's problems that allows us to sustain our excellence, to sustain our program, and to move into exciting new directions. But we felt that there has been a serious lack of engagement by the college with the members of the school in looking for solutions to the problem.
So there wasn't any sort of staff consultation period or anything, or a meeting or a session of any sort?
There have been a number of meetings. So the university and the college authorities, I think, have complied with the letter of the law entirely. I couldn't fault them in terms of formal legal requirements, but what I have found really disappointing has been the lack of actual engagement, the capacity to sit down with people from the college side and say, look, this is what we think is the nature of the problem, this is how we think it came about, these are the things that we think could be remedied, the things that have been done that should now be undone, these are the things that we think can't be changed, and therefore we need to come up with new solutions. These are our ideas. What are your ideas? Well, how can we achieve an interaction between your ideas and our ideas? The best research shows that solutions come out of exchange of ideas, come out of conversations and the exchange of perceptions. And although we've had meetings that have been described as conversations, they've been very much one-sided. We haven't had the kind of engagement from the college side that we would really like.
So they're effectively telling you rather than asking you about these sort of things.
Well, they have, the pattern has been to listen to us, to nod, but to give nothing back in the conversation, to not to engage with our ideas. We're happy to be told that won't work for this reason, but we haven't had that kind of engagement. It's really been very disappointing for a lot of us.
Sounds exactly like the undergraduate consultation session as well. It's so upsetting to see that the staff have had the same problem as the undergraduates.
Yeah.
We thought our problem was that we were children.
With your undergraduates.
Yeah, they were undergraduates, but apparently not.
No.
So our next... Yep, so we've talked about an alternative model. Yeah, so I guess the only thing now is, do you have any additional comments to make?
I suppose it's been very encouraging for us on the staff to have so much support from the students, both the postgraduate students and the undergraduate students. By the nature of things, there's a bit of a gap between us. We're teaching, you're learning, and we have really appreciated the extent to which our students have engaged in this issue, not only looking after their own interests, but thinking, as we're also thinking of the broad interests of the school and the long-term interests of the university. So out of the misery that this process has created, there has actually been some good in terms of creating a broader sense of community.
Yes, indeed. It's so sad that this sort of thing should bring us together, but
yes,
it has.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I guess we're all concerned about the reputation of the university as a whole, and well, we came to this university expecting excellence, exactly as the advertisements tell us, and this is what's happened. And you know, my generation of uni students, I'm now in my 5th year, so I can remember School of Music protests. I was in School of Music protests. We did College of Arts Social Science, and they tried to cut tutorials. We did that as well, and now this. And I feel like every step of the way, as I've grown as a uni student, I've been fighting for what I thought was implicit in a good university.
Yes.
And that's so disappointing.
But one of the things that's really good is that people who are probably not going to be directly affected by the changes are also lining up. I was sitting at the postgraduate session the other day next to one of our graduates who is leaving in a couple of weeks to take up an academic job at another university. But he was there as part of the support because he cares about the future of ANU.
Oh yes, oh yes. There's just so much that will be lost if these cuts take place.
Yes.
The way that they are. And the saddest thing is that they're not even being proper about it, that they're not doing this the right way, and that they're not... It's like naughty politics. It's dirty politics. Sorry. I've been speaking Chinese all day. I can't speak English right now. But, yeah, because, you know, they make the consultation period. We had to fight to get it extended to 4 weeks from 2 weeks. And now it still should be extended longer. Just before, you know, Easter weekend. Just after Easter weekend.
Yeah.
The busiest time of the year for everybody. And they're going to release the budget on the 7th, of course.
Which is after the consultation period is over.
That's just so silly. It's almost a laughing matter, if it wasn't so sad.
I think there is some extent, and it's one of the unfortunate features of Australian universities in general, so it's not particularly ANU, that the gap between management and the academics on the front line has grown, so that neither side really understands what the other side is doing. And we have, in university managements in general, and at this university, we do have some really good people who care very much about the university and care intellectually and academically about what happens, but it's often many years since they've been in a classroom. They come from specific disciplines, and they don't have the opportunity to know what life is like, what academic life is like down in the trenches. So that in some cases I suspect they are only interested in simple formulae, but in many cases they're genuinely interested in good outcomes, but they don't have the knowledge of the basic work of the university to be able to come up with a way to achieve that. That's why it's such a shame when we're not talking to each other.
That's right. Interaction it's just so necessary, and it's so sad that we haven't been able to do that this time.
Yes.
Alright, so thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much for